Hey everybody, this is a newer worm drive Skilsaw, and if you look at this one, it's an older one. This is the one that I've had for about 20 years, and it started leaking a few years back, and I just put it on the shelf and kind of walked away. I used it for a while after it leaked, and so this grease was all caked on, and it was just starting to make too much of a mess, so I walked away from it. But lately I've been cleaning up the shop and I got curious about where the leak was coming from, and it turns out it was between the gasket here, or the gasket that's between here. But I couldn't really figure out why that gasket would fail, because this is on there pretty good. So I started digging in and I found out that there's a bearing that goes right in here. And that bearing this is just part of it, began to fall apart, see? That's the other part, and it's all bent and screwed up. Now, the best way to prevent this leak is just to make sure that the nut that goes on top, here's the nut of that bearing, is just snug down. And just check it every once in a while. There's a big cap nut that's got a seal. There it is, goes on top. All you have to do is open that up and just make sure that nut's seated, and you can end up with no leak problems. Because what happens is, let me spin this out. This worm gear right here gets thrust out by the motor. You can look inside there. There's a gear that's connected to that arbor. And when that worm gear starts to get thrust out and there's slop in that bearing, because that nut's not seated, it starts to put force on this arbor, because that worm gear can move and slap against this arbor. And that puts force on all four of those screws. And those screws are what holds this and this together, and the gasket gets shifted. And over time, and it probably took 15 years for this saw to start leaking, but over time, because I never tightened that nut up, this leak began. And had I just gone here and checked that every once in a while, I probably would have never had a leak. Anyway, I hope that's helpful. If you have a worm drive saw, just go in there and check that, and it might save you a lot of trouble. Thanks, bye.